for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have from Desert Creeks Fellowship, Rod Warnberg. Hi.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity. Would you join me in prayer? Father, thank you for your goodness. Father, today we come before you in Jesus' name, and we ask that you would bring your wisdom and your guiding, lead us into all truth. Father, I pray that you would help this group to lead this town well, give them wisdom and insight so they may do the best they can for our community. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. We'll do a roll call, please.
Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Charno.
Here.
Councilmember Tolas. Councilmember Brown. Councilmember Magazine.
Here.
Councilmember Friedel.
Present.
Councilmember Spellich.
Present.
Thank you. We'll start with our reports. Town Manager Grady Miller will go first, please.
Thank you, Mayor. If you don't mind, I'm going to take my mask off. It's a little hard to talk through and understand me. I've got two reports I want to report tonight. One is there's been a lot of interest in what's been going on with the roundabout, and I did want to report to the council and to the public that due to some modifications that occurred, we found that there was a dedicated right turn lane that caused some concerns with pedestrian and safety for vehicular traffic going through that location. And so we did make some modifications to that, and that has caused a slight delay to that project. I received the latest update today on the project schedule, and it looks like we're looking at approximately the 19th is when they're going to do grading, and then the pavement will be placed down within 3 days of that date. There is a project meeting tomorrow that the Public Works Director will be at, and I've asked him to see what they can do to tighten up that schedule. The public's very interested in trying to get that completed. Today, while I was out looking at it, I saw two people driving through the roundabout. I don't know how they did this, but they were driving in the reverse direction in the roundabout. And we've been getting some concerns from citizens about that as well. I think what's happening is people are coming out of the post office, instead of doing a forced left, they're going right, and then they're proceeding into the intersection going the opposite direction into the roundabout, unfortunately. So that's not funny, it's very serious, and we want to make sure that we get this done as soon as possible. The other item, as you're aware, we have a development agreement with Toll Brothers that calls for Eagle Ridge to be developed and built by December 2020. Finally, we've been starting to see some good progress by Toll Brothers on putting the utility lines in under the ground up there. And so we're anticipating that even though it's December 2020 and we do have a force majeure letter from Toll Brothers that we received at the late spring, we believe that it may be done in time for Thanksgiving. That's our goal. We'd love to have that trailhead open so that families can really enjoy that beauty up there during the holiday season. So there is a lot of progress, and we believe that that could be done. So we'll continue to update the council as we get closer to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from our councilman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As many of you know, I'm a big proponent of collecting fees that is owed to the town. And one of them was the environmental fee, and the other one was court fines that haven't been paid. So on a very good note, I just learned that one of our staff, Rhonda Brenneman, customer service rep, who you meet when you come into upstairs on the second floor, Rhonda's at the desk. She was given a list of people that were not paying the environmental fee, and she worked on it from home during COVID. And the biggest scofflaw we had was someone who hadn't paid $12,000 in fees and actually, since the inception of the fee, didn't pay, and it was an amount of $12,000, and she worked on that, and I'm happy to report that she got this gentleman to pay the town the $12,000 in fees that were owed to us. So I want to compliment her on a great job, and I couldn't be happier that we're collecting money from people who owe the town. So thanks, Rhonda.
Thank you, David. I think she's hiding back there, so I hope she hears us thanking her. Jerry.
Yes, Mayor, I just wanted to let you know that I did attend a couple of sessions for economic development hosted by the Arizona Association for Economic Development. It's generally geared toward new council people, and they went over, there was lots of good information talking about alignment of efforts between the county, the state, and the town, and filling skill gaps and that type of stuff. So it was well attended and well received as well. So I'd also like to just throw out a little public service announcement. I got a call from a resident that lost a set of car keys in town, and somebody turned them into the sheriff's department, and he went through quite a procedure to get his keys back, total of about 5 or 6 hours time. But we do have a lost and found in the community center, so if people lose something like that, just to remind them to take it to the community center. I know we have some restricted hours there, so it might be easier for people to get their stuff back.
Thank you. Maybe we can talk about that, you know, at some point and see if there's another alternative here on, that they can stay on campus. Do you have anything, Mike? No meetings? So yeah, I've been kind of sending invitations to meetings to Jerry and to Sharon and Peggy, as there's a lot of activity online now, and it's kind of a good way to learn some stuff. So I wanted to announce probably some stuff that you've already heard. The Census Bureau announced it's going to continue counting individuals now through October 31st. That's 2020census.gov, and there's also a phone number. Everything is online, and let's get counted. The deadline to register to vote has been extended till October 23rd. I understand there's an appeal or something on that, but for now, that's the way it stands. So October 23rd, 2020. The East Valley Partnership meeting, this time was a panel discussion about the upcoming local elections in the legislature. Many of us attended beautiful remembrances over the last week for our friends, former Councilman Ed Key and Mike Archambault. Again, our hearts go out to their families. We're a better community for their service. And in that spirit, I wanted to say that the Fountain at 50 committee is gathering items for a time capsule, which is a glimpse of our community to future generations. What will it be? We'll get to tell the story of an unlikely start, locating a record-breaking tall fountain in the middle of the desert, becoming a hometown with memories shared by family and friends spanning half a century. We've been experiencing some rough times here in our little town, and we're understandably anxious and uncertain, disappointed, and even feeling isolated. But please, let's not forget that we're neighbors and volunteers with many common goals. We're completing our Vision Fountain Hills survey, getting ready to vote on our publicly created general plan, which we're going to be discussing later tonight and seeing a nice video. So even as we choose contents to display our past and our present, we're shaping the future together, and we are all part of this. Last thing I did was go to MAG Regional Council, which was focused on Prop 400, and we're going to talk about that as we get into our RPTA discussion here. The MAG Regional Domestic Violence Council has coordinated a response to domestic violence through the criminal justice system since 1999, and they save time doing it that way, and resources, and of course lives. Our town hall is lit up purple. We have our purple ribbons today, and unless there's any other comments, I'll move on and read that proclamation if that's okay. Great. So the first proclamation we have is the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas home should be a place of warmth, unconditional love, tranquility, and security for most of us, home and family can indeed be counted among our greatest blessings. And whereas tragically, for many Americans, these are blessings that are tarnished by violence and fear. Women, men, young children, and the elderly are all counted among the victims of domestic violence, and physical injury and deaths occur, and emotional scars are often permanent. And whereas our law enforcement officials, shelters, hotline services, healthcare providers, the clergy, and concerned citizens are helping in the effort to end domestic violence, and whereas we must recognize the compassion and dedication of these volunteers and professionals, applaud their efforts, and increase public understanding of this important problem, especially now. And whereas the Town Council approved Resolution 2013-44 on August 15, 2013, expressing support for the Start by Believing campaign through the End Violence Against Women International Organization, therefore I, Jenny Dickey, Mayor of Fountain Hills, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Fountain Hills and urge all citizens to observe this month by becoming aware of the tragedy of domestic violence and supporting community efforts and working toward its end. So we have a couple other proclamations today. Next is Fire Prevention Month. Dave, I'm sure that you had something to do with this, and I'll read this from up here. And we do have the official one. We can get that to you later. Whereas the town of Fountain Hills is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Fountain Hills, and fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas home fires killed more than 2,630 people in the United States in 2017, and fire departments in the U.S. responded to 357,000 home fires. And whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, where 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen, 31% of these fires resulting from unattended cooking. And more than half of reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves. And children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than being burned in a cooking fire. Whereas Fountain Hills residents should stay in the kitchen when frying food on the stovetop, keep a 30-foot kid zone around cooking areas, and keep anything that can catch fire away from stovetops. Residents who've planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire, with working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas Fountain Hills first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education, Fountain Hills residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas the 2020 Fire Prevention Month theme is Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Therefore, I, Jenny Dickey, Mayor of Fountain Hills, do hereby proclaim October as Fire Prevention Month throughout the town. I urge all the people of Fountain Hills to check their kitchens for fire hazards, use safe cooking practices, and to support the public safety activities and efforts of our Fountain Hills Fire and Emergency Services during Fire Prevention Month. And I won't ask you or my son about anything that might happen in the kitchens at the stations. But you guys do cook up good dinners. Let's see, the last proclamation we have is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So that's a pink, so I didn't have a pink ribbon, but I did have some pink in the clothes. Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is a worldwide annual campaign in October involving thousands of organizations to highlight the importance of breast cancer awareness, education, and research. Whereas according to the Centers for Disease and Prevention, breast cancer is the most common cancer among women, with 1 in 8 women in the United States diagnosed in her lifetime and on average. Whereas an estimated 325,000 new cases of breast cancer will be diagnosed in women in the U.S. this year, estimated 42,170 women will die. And although rare, an estimated 2,620 men will be diagnosed this year in the U.S., approximately 520 will die. And whereas there are over 3.5 million breast cancer survivors in the United States, thus increasing the public's knowledge about the importance of early detection and regular screening mammograms, followed by timely treatment upon diagnosis, can significantly improve a patient's chance of survival. Whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is an opportunity to unite all citizens in our community to prevent deaths and recognize survivors, those currently battling the disease, friends and families of a diagnosed patient, and applaud the efforts of our medical professionals and researchers working to find a cure. Therefore, I, Jenny Dickey, Mayor of Fountain Hills, do hereby proclaim October 2020 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and call upon everyone to publicly reaffirm our nation's strong and continuing commitment to controlling and finding a cure for breast cancer. So thank you for those. We move on, Grady, to the scheduled public appearances. Our first one, I believe, is telephonic.
Exactly. We have a virtual one here
Yes.
with the National Weather Service. I'm going to call upon just the fire chief to kind of explain what was kind of thinking behind the town getting certified to become a storm-ready designation or storm-ready community. And then we'll turn it over to our guest, who, as you can see on your screen, is awaiting to present this to us. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief Ott.
Well, good morning.
Thank you.
Well, I'm hoping it was morning. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to take this opportunity to introduce Mike Winters to you. He actually started March 9th, right kind of when COVID hit. Mike comes to us with an abundance of experience. At one point, he was my supervisor when I was a 40-hour inspector, and I have nothing but great respect for him. And he's doing okay under my watch here. So he kind of every once in a while he reminds me, "Hey, you used to work for me," which is okay. He also has a great amount of experience in emergency management, and he was kind of the key driver getting us to this point where we could get the storm-ready designation from the National Weather Service. So with that, Mike did all the work on it. I'm just here to look good and take the credit. So.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're presenting to you tonight is a certification as a storm-ready community. It's a partnership with the National Weather Service. We went through a process, an application process. We had to show that we were prepared as an emergency operations center, that we had ways of notifying not only the general public, but our employees of severe weather. We've equipped all the government buildings in town with weather radios. So the key to any kind of being prepared is to have early notification. Obviously, someday it will rain again. I don't know when. Hopefully sooner than later. But keep in mind that flooding is a real big problem in the state of Arizona. It's probably the biggest problem that we have, the biggest hazard that throughout the state of Arizona. 90% of all presidentially declared disasters are the result of weather, and about 500 people per year perish due to weather-related incidents, and it causes about $14 billion worth of damage. The great thing about the state of Arizona is we kind of are insulated from that. We don't get it a lot, but of those of you who've been around the state back in the 70s and the 80s may remember we used to get some pretty significant rains during the monsoon season and during the winter season that resulted in some significant incidents. So we put this together. We worked with the National Weather Service. They're live via satellite from their office in Phoenix, and I'm going to turn it over to them in just a minute. But remember, we do have an emergency operations plan. We developed a severe weather plan to go along with that. We feel as though this is a good program for the community. So if in case we ever did have some sort of a weather emergency, flooding, a tornado, whatever it may be, hopefully we can get the word out sooner than later so people can be safe, and that's what it's all about. So I'll turn it over to the National Weather Service if they'd like to say something.
Yes, this is Marvin Percha. I'm actually from the Weather Service office here. I'm live from our office. You can see our display behind us, satellite, radar observations, but I'm going to go into a little presentation about what Storm Ready is. Let me go ahead and start. Basically, it's me and actually Jarrett Rogers. He's our current acting warning coordinator for meteorology. He's on this call as well. It's a partnership working together to save lives. Just why do we need Storm Ready? Approximately 98% of all presidentially declared disasters are weather-related. On average, there are 500 weather-related deaths each year across America. Severe weather causes nearly $15 billion in property damage in here. There's just some shots here from around Valley. Here, Fountain Hills, some flooding in one of your parks there. What is Storm Ready? It's a grassroots program that focuses on improving communication and severe weather preparedness. Storm Ready helps community leaders and emergency managers strengthen local safety programs. It prepares communities for severe weather, that's what Mike was saying, from tornadoes to tsunamis, or flooding in our case, dust storms. Storm Ready provides community leaders and emergency managers with detailed and clear guidance on how to improve their warning and weather preparedness programs. So there are incentives to become Storm Ready. It improves the timeliness of hazardous weather warning reception and dissemination for your community. It helps local emergency managers justify costs of hazardous weather-related programs. It provides an image incentive to the community, encourages surrounding areas to improve their hazardous weather preparedness programs. And your community, Fountain Hills, may be eligible for a discount under the National Flood Insurance Program's Community Rating System, NFIP. It's a partnership that we built between the partners here, the National Weather Service, and the communities. It's crucial to its successful integrated warning process. It allows you to do things together that you can't do alone, and it leverages resources to help get the job done. How did Fountain Hills or any community become Storm Ready? First of all, you got to establish a communication coordination plan. You guys had to establish a 24-hour warning point, an emergency operations center. You got to have ways to receive our critical warning information. Weather radio being very important. Interactive NWS, INWS mobile alerting, NWS chat. Of course, through the local news media, radio and TV, the internet, amateur radio, pagers, cell phones. As our dust storm advisories are sent out on our cell phones now. How do you continue to become storm ready? You monitor evolving weather locally by weather instruments, river gauge monitoring, radar access, either through the internet or local providers, lightning detection. And then you've got to have ways to disseminate warnings through emergency alert systems, cable override, no weather radio in public buildings, sirens, and other systems unique to your area. Just some shots here of some flooding out there. This was a severe thunderstorm warning that was issued for Fountain Hills last January. How does the community come storm ready? Increase community preparedness, spotter and dispatcher severe weather training. We provide spotter training for the communities, including Fountain Hills, public weather safety presentations, community seminars, enhancing internal operational procedures, we had to review your hazardous weather action plan. Fountain Hills has expressed a commitment to emergency preparedness through the Storm Ready program. We'll continue a strong relationship with the National Weather Service. And Fountain Hills is now the 35th Storm Ready community in Arizona, so congratulations. And thank you so much for your partnership. And thank you very much. And here's some shots of your snow last year. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that. Does council have any questions? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Just one quick question. I don't know if it's for the chiefs here for the service, but the main way our citizens will be notified is going to be through cell phone notifications then, you think? Is that going to be the primary way?
There's a variety of methods we could use. Everything from the wireless emergency alerts. We could utilize Code Red if it was something very serious. Again, there's local media, the TV, radio, the emergency alert system. We do have a partnership with the Flood Control District of Maricopa County, so we have access to flood gauges. So again, hopefully we can get information out ahead of time to potentially save people's lives.
Thank you. Grady, do you have something?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
We're just very pleased. What's that? Yeah, I shouldn't do that. But I do. Actually, I'm very pleased with our Deputy Chief, Mike Winters, for bringing this to our attention. I think this is a really major achievement for the town to participate in this, and I think it's great for our residents. And anytime that we can be storm ready and we can get the word out and try to be prepared, As we know, we've been hit very seriously the previous 2 years with some major storms that caused some major damage. We've been very fortunate that that damage didn't really extend to too many homes or private property. But I think that this is very important, and I thank you, Mike, for bringing this to our attention and having us participate in this awesome program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. We
Okay,
appreciate it.
The National Weather Service would like a quick picture. Bob, can you help us out with that? We'll just hold this
That sounds
from
good.
there.
You're the boss.
You can do it right here, and then we can all be in it. How's that?
I don't know, Bob, can you get Marvin in there too?
I don't know how it'll work, but we'll see.
Jared, are you on there?
Yeah, my webcam's not working though. So.
Oh, it's not working? Oh.
That works. It's visible.
Is it? Okay, I'll go down there if you really want
No. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate everything you guys do.
It's a pleasure. Let us know if you have any questions or you need any help.
Thank you.
Bring us some rain.
Yeah. Take care.
Okay, you take care too and be safe.
Thank you. Our next presentation is EPCOR. Grady, did you want to announce this?
I do. I want to basically introduce two people who are here tonight. We are going to have two different speakers representing EPCOR. The first one will be Chad Guzman, who is the Government Relations Director, and he's going to be reporting to the council regarding the proposed rate case that's before the Arizona Corporation Commission. And then following him will be Frank Metzler, who is the Operations Director with EPCOR, and he's going to be giving you a presentation on the operational side of EPCOR. And as you know, EPCOR, we do not have our own utilities that we operate. So EPCOR is a major community partner in this community and the only water provider in the community. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Guzman.
Yeah, thank you and good evening.
Hi, welcome.
And I did have some PowerPoint slides, so I'm not sure if those are pulled up. Oh, there it is. Will I use this? Okay. Let's see here. Got the... Am I controlling the mouse on? Oh, there it is.
Is this?
Yeah, if it works, that was perfect. Awesome. Thank you again. Good evening, Mayor Dickey, council members. For the record, my name is Chad Guzman. I am the Director of Government Relations for EPCOR. And first and foremost, just wanted to say thank you so much for giving EPCOR time on your always busy agenda. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's really nice to get out of the house and give a presentation face to face and see everyone in person. And so we just really appreciate your time today. And before I begin, really want to highlight quickly the special relationship that EPCOR has with the town of Fountain Hills. And Mr. Miller touched on that briefly, but we've operated the water system here for many years now and have really enjoyed just a strong partnership with the town and with the community in general. We've worked extremely well with not only yourselves, but with staff and other community leaders and partner organizations that are located here. And so many of our employees live here, including several of the members of our executive leadership team. And so we just really look forward to continuing the work with you on this and many other policy issues well into the future. And so thank you again for this opportunity. So diving right in, What are we going to talk about today? A brief history of the most recent rate case that we had in front of the Corporation Commission over the past few years. A quick update on some of the biggest policy questions that are going to be addressed in the current rate case that you have been made aware of, and then a look toward the future of what are some of the next steps that are going to be occurring in the regulatory process going forward. Quick recap of how rates are set. EPCOR is the largest regulated water utility in Arizona, and our rates and pricing are set at the Arizona Corporation Commission, the 5-member elected body that sets our rates here in Arizona. Now, the formal rate application process, as you'll see, is a multi-year process, and we are now using the 2019 test year. We've kind of finished that half of the process, and now we're in the formal regulatory proceeding that is before the Arizona Corporation Commission. So now the process that we're in right now, we're looking at about a 12 to 14-month time frame for rate cases that are in front of the commission right now. So just quickly, what is in a dollar of ratepayers? When a ratepayer gives EPCOR $1, what is that paying for exactly? And we want to go just step by step exactly what is in a dollar of water that your constituents and our customers are paying for. And 32 cents on that dollar are going directly to capital investments, building the infrastructure needed to deliver safe, reliable, and clean water to your constituents. Those are the pipes, the plants, the physical infrastructure that's delivering that essential service for homes and businesses here in your community. 31 cents on that dollar is operating cost, operating that infrastructure. 17 cents, taxes. 9 cents for administrative and legal and regulatory processes, and 8 cents on debt financing. And finally, the last 3 cents is the return or the profit that we make, the return on the investment that we're making to provide water and wastewater services for communities throughout Arizona. So, but I want to be specific that we only earn that return on the 32 cent of the capital improvements and capital investment that we're making. And so if you do a quick calculation, that's normally between 8 and 10% return on that investment that we're making, again, to deliver water to these communities. Quick overview of just where EPCOR is located throughout Arizona. Here in the valley, obviously in the far east side of the map is where we're going to focus in the Chaparral Water District, covering the town of Fountain Hills today. We'll do a deeper dive on that region, but we are spread out throughout the greater Phoenix metropolitan area. Up in northern Arizona, we operate several water districts in Mojave County and now La Paz County, and then a very small water district in southern Arizona in Tubac. So quick recap of what has occurred in front of the Corporation Commission in regards to EPCOR and what has really led us to where we are today. We filed our previous rate case back in 2017, which went through that process, again, that multi-year process that ultimately was voted on in early last year in 2019, when it finally went before the 5-member commission for a final vote. One of the 5 commissioners recused themselves ultimately, and the remaining 4 actually split in a 2-2 deadlocked vote on that previous rate case that many of you may have been involved with over the past couple years. So what happens when you have a tie? The rate case does not move forward, and instead the commission ordered us to implement what are called interim rates, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. So we were ordered to implement interim rates. We were also ordered at that time to file another full rate case by May of this year. And so then we'll then get to that point and talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But I want to highlight something that we're going to touch on that also included in this order to file a new rate case. We were also ordered by the commission to include several different regional water district consolidation or unification options. And so we're going to talk about the policy question of district unification in a moment as well. So interim rates basically keep the exact same rate design in effect and in place, but also adds a surcharge calculated for each district based on individual water use that is analyzed and administered by the Corporation Commission. So that's where we are today as a result of the last couple of years not producing a rate case outcome, essentially. So now the current rate case, one of the biggest policy questions that is going to be posed in this case is district unification, which I just mentioned earlier. So if you recall, in the previous rate case, the only proposal that was on the board was full consolidation of EPCOR's 11 water districts throughout the state of Arizona that we just looked at on that map a couple slides ago. And then I touched on it briefly, but now in this rate case, we have been ordered by the commission to include regional unification scenarios that group several different districts in either terms of geography or other factors. And so what this slide lays out, and there's a lot of information on here, is the 5 different scenarios that we included in our most recent application to the commission. And just quickly, the baseline scenarios are 4 and 5, 4 being the full consolidation option that was considered in the last case, and 5 being status quo, where each individual district is considered separately and as standalone districts. But I want to focus our conversation today a little bit more on scenarios 1 through 3, which are kind of the newer concepts that are going to be considered in this rate case. And you can see the different groups of regional unification scenarios among the different districts. And focusing on Chaparral specifically in scenarios 1 and 2, they would be unified with several other districts. In scenario 3, they are still remaining as a standalone district. So in scenarios 3 and 5, Chaparral is still standalone, status quo, considered on its own. Now, the logical question is then, what do these different scenarios look like for the bottom line? What is the potential bill impact going to be for the residents of your community? And so this slide has even more information on it than the last one, but I want you to focus on the third line down, again, focusing on Chaparral. What this slide shows is the potential bill impact based on the average water usage in this community. So, and you'll see that it's near 7,000 gallons per month is the average usage here in Fountain Hills. And the current bill, average bill based on that usage is $53.70. So going back to, again, scenario 1, where Chaparral is grouped in with a number of other districts, in a unification scenario, the potential bill impact would be a $2.82 rate increase based on our current proposal. Similarly, scenario 2, a different grouping, a smaller grouping, Group C is what it's called on here, with Chaparral grouped with only 3 other districts, would result in an even smaller rate increase of $2.15. Now, going back to scenarios 3 and 5, where Chaparral is still considered a standalone district, the potential bill impact would be a rate increase now of up to $5.81. And finally, scenario 4, which, if you recall, is full consolidation, which was considered in the last case and is included in here for baseline purposes and otherwise, would actually result in a rate decrease for the Chaparral district of $6.38. So I think, especially for the Chaparral District, this really gives a good cross-section and highlights the difference that different scenarios can have for the ultimate bill impact for these customers. And, you know, before I go any further, I want to emphasize also that EPCOR has no position on any of these scenarios. We have simply included them as a part of our application as ordered by the Commission in our last rate case, but we are not taking a position for nor against any of these individual scenarios. We're wanting to include them in our application and have a thorough and thoughtful policy conversation about the costs and benefits that potential scenarios can provide for our customers. And so laying out the potential scenarios here in front of you, the Chaparral District would benefit from more consolidation or more unification in terms of helping keep rates affordable. So another...
we're going to ask maybe a question while we're on this.
Absolutely, please.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I was just going to ask if you were recommending one over the other, so you already answered that one question. And then did you say originally, going back to the original submittal, EPCOR had proposed total consolidation of all of them, unification? Is that what you had said?
Correct, yeah. So in the previous rate case, full consolidation was the only scenario that was included when considering the policy question of consolidation or unification at all. So that was the only option on the table, so to speak.
And the company's thinking behind that in terms of proposing that?
In the previous rate case? Would have to get back to you to get a little bit more information on the company's thinking on the previous rate case. You know, I think we believe that unification as a concept in general can provide, in a lot of different instances, benefits to our customers. It can help us streamline operations. It can help us work with all of our districts in a more streamlined manner, quite frankly. However, we don't want to take a position in this rate case on any of the scenarios that have been laid out. But I think as a general principle, we would like to highlight the benefits that unification can bring to our customers.
So why are you bringing this before them if you're not proposing that the full consolidation is what you'd like to do? I understand that they made you kind of come up with these other scenarios, so you may not have one better than the other, but as far as full consolidation, was that not something that you wanted to bring forward?
So we did include it, again, as one of the 5 scenarios. We had all of the data and analysis has really been done on that scenario from the previous rate case. And so we did want to include it, you know, among the scenarios, and I think it does serve as a baseline case to compare with some of the other regional options as well. So it provides that cross-section that really highlights the difference that unification can make in certain circumstances.
The scenario where everybody stays standalone still represents an increase for everybody, correct?
That is correct, yeah. So this rate case does propose a revenue increase based on the 2019 test year where we made certain investments in the system throughout Arizona and specifically here as well, but does reflect that.
So if you don't get any of the consolidation, whatever, you're basically going for just a rate increase to cover all the infrastructure and other issues, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we are proposing a revenue increase in this case. And I should note that that bottom line number of the revenue increase does not change among these different scenarios. So it still is an overall rate increase or revenue increase ask as a part of our proposal. It's just if different districts are grouped together in different ways, how do you put that puzzle together and it comes out differently for each district?
Okay, I might as well just ask you my questions. So if this goes to them and obviously it's hugely different to have consolidation from one district to another, what would you say would be the operational downside to Lake Fountain Hills if you consolidate, if there is one?
The operational downside?
To for our community, is there anything wrong with the idea of you consolidating that would make our customers have less service, or the outages that we have? Would you still be able to put your capital into the needs like on Sunridge and all that? What would be a downside? Because for us to look at this and see it's $6 less rather than $5 more, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. So what else am I missing in there?
Sure. Thank you. That's a great question. And I first and foremost want to defer any of the ins and outs of the operational questions to my colleague Frank Metzler, who will be presenting as well. But I want to highlight, first and foremost that, EPCOR prides itself on our operational excellence in all of our water districts, and specifically here in Fountain Hills, and would not compromise on our commitment to our customers and your constituents to maintain the level of operational excellence that we currently achieve throughout all of our districts. And so I know that we would not compromise that regardless of the impact or the scenario that we move forward. And I want to be very clear about that we would not seek to do anything that would harm our operations in Fountain Hills.
Thank you. And one last question. Does the meter size matter there? I mean, these rates are based on what we would do here, even with our different size meters?
Yes, the meter size does matter, and we actually have this chart. It's not in my slideshow today. We have this chart for different meter sizes as well, and I think it's based on the most common meter size within each district, and so we can get more information based on that as well. Our regulatory team has all of that information in detail as well.
Thank you. Anybody have questions at this point? Thanks for taking all my questions.
No, of course. And before we move on, just wanted to highlight one other policy point that is very important to us in this current proceeding, is that this rate case will continue all of the current customer assistance programs that we offer to our customers. And some of those biggest ones are highlighted here: the low-income deployed service member and disabled veterans assistance programs that we do offer. And we encourage your constituents to reach out to us. We want to make sure that resources, especially in 2020 right now, are getting into the communities where they're needed most. And so that's our commitment as well. And then finally, just looking to the future as we proceed through this proceeding over the next 12 to 14 months, as I mentioned, is we are going to be holding numerous community meetings over the coming months to answer questions from our customers. And so it's a regular occurrence during our rate cases in front of the commission. Although this year, amid the pandemic and some of the limitations that we are facing, we're going to be moving those community meetings to entirely virtual. And so we're in the process of scheduling those, and we want to ensure that as soon as that schedule is finalized, we're going to get you guys a copy of when those are going to be happening. And we're being mindful of town council and other community meetings that are already on the calendar so that we can maximize attendance and participation in those. And that will have the ability, customers will have the ability to ask questions as a part of these virtual meetings. And with that, happy to answer any other questions, but my colleague, Frank Metzler, our Director of Operations, is going to give a quick update on the operations here in Fountain Hills, and would defer any other technical questions to him as well, but happy to answer anything else that you have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Alan, do you have anything on the phone?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
again.
much.
Before I get started, do you all have a preference on whether I have the mask on or off? Okay. All right.
Welcome.
Good evening. Madam Mayor and council members, my name is Frank Metzler. I'm the Director of Operations for the Eastern Division of EPCOR. If you think of those slides that Chad put up earlier, basically I'm responsible for everything east of I-17 and then everything up on the Colorado River. So I cover a lot of miles. I also made a note to myself for future reference that I should never go after Chad because he's a seasoned public relations, public speaker, and I'm an operations guy. So please bear with me. I'll do the best that I can. I wanted you to know there are approximately 15 employees who work every day in the Fountain Hills system for EPCOR. Our job is to provide clean, safe, and reliable service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We take that responsibility very seriously, and we greatly appreciate the opportunity to be your water service provider here in Fountain Hills. I don't have fancy slides like Chad. I have some old school notes here, but let me give you a brief summary of what I'm going to go over, and then I'm happy to take any questions on operations issues. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the system. How does the water system work here in Fountain Hills, very briefly. I'm going to talk about how we invest capital in the community to keep the water infrastructure healthy and vibrant and resilient. I'm going to give you a couple examples of some key capital investment projects that we've done over the last couple years or that we're about to engage in. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about main breaks, because water main breaks is always a subject that raises a lot of anxiety and attention. So very briefly, the Fountain Hills water system serves 14,000 connections, roughly about 24,000 customers here in Fountain Hills. We get our water from the Central Arizona Project, which comes all the way from the Colorado River, and we also have 2 very good producing wells in the community. So through the year, we provide a blend of Central Arizona Project surface water and groundwater. That surface water is treated at our Shea Water Treatment Plant, which is over in Palatial Estates, and the wells are distributed actually not far from here. We have the ability to treat and deliver about 20 million gallons of water a day if we need to. To put that into some sort of some way you can understand that, in average, which was a very high demand month, the typical average daily demand here in Fountain Hills was about 7.2 million gallons per day. So we have lots of additional capacity to support future growth, or if demands increase for whatever reason, we have that capacity. To give you an idea of our operation, in addition to having 15 employees out here every day, our annual electric bill is about $1 million a year. And our annual water bill, what we pay to the Central Arizona Project, is about $1.6 million a year. So we pay a water bill too. So let's talk a little bit about how we spend money in the community to keep the water infrastructure healthy for our customers. I went back and looked at the data over the last 4 years, and over the last 4 years, we've invested about $4.25 million per year in the water infrastructure here in Fountain Hills. So what do we spend that money on? We have 9 water storage reservoirs and the surface water treatment plant. We have water main replacements like Sunridge Drive, and of course we have water main breaks that cost money. Every year we try to replace about 1/12 of all of the water meters in the community. So that's about, this year it was 1,250 water meters that we replaced, and that cost about $300,000. We also replaced 18 fire hydrants and installed 6 brand new smart fire hydrants this year, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, at a cost of about $500,000. And that number is not correct, so strike that. I'll get you the correct number on that. In terms of services and valve replacements, we have about 1,400 valves in Fountain Hills spread throughout the community, and those valves get old and they stop working. And if they don't work, when you have a main break, you can't turn the water off. So this year alone, we replaced 25 valves and 55 services, which is from the water main to the customer water meter. And that cost was roughly $550,000. And I just wanted to point out, I'm very proud of our relationship with engineering here in Fountain Hills, with Justin and with Manager Miller.
we work very hard to make sure that when we're doing this work and we're ripping up the roads in order to get to our infrastructure, that we try to do that ahead of your repaving schedule, so that we do our work before you're going to come in and do your repaving, so that you have nice, smooth, new streets. Okay, let's talk about a couple examples of key expensive infrastructure projects that we've engaged in over the last couple years. Many of you know that we had a lot of main breaks on Sunridge Drive. Approximately 6,500 feet of main were replaced underneath the road at a cost of about $2.7 million. At the Shea Surface Water Treatment Plant last year, that plant's been there a long time. It's getting fairly old. We had to go out and replace all of the equipment and the storage tanks and everything related to the chemicals that we keep out there. We finished that project, and that cost about $1.5 million. Those chemicals are used to treat the water to make sure that they meet water quality standards for all of your constituents. Some other smaller, less expensive examples of projects that we work on that are important to the community would include the Adero Canyon Trailhead, extension of the water service to the trailhead. We were approached by Justin and Manager Miller about the need to get water up to the trailhead, and so we expedited the schedule to make that happen for you. We had some neighbors near one of our reservoirs who were concerned about noise at night from a fan that was on top of one of our reservoirs. And so we took it upon ourselves to go out and take that fan off the top of the reservoir, buy a new fan that was much quieter, and put it away from the houses so that it didn't disturb the peace and quiet in the evening. And then just as a small example, we were approached by the neighbors in Palatial Estates about the wall near our surface water treatment plant. They asked if we would repaint it, and we were happy to do so. That's a lot cheaper than a main break or a main replacement, but we were happy to engage in that project. So let's talk about two critical upcoming projects that we'll be looking at next year and the year after. The first one is that there's a surface water storage reservoir, above ground steel tank at the north end of Fountain Hills, right off of Blackbird. That reservoir was built in 1972. I don't know about you all, I just turned 55, and you know, once you get past 40, 50 years, sometimes it's time for some significant work on your infrastructure. We're going to be replacing that tank before it fails. That's probably going to cost around $1.5 million. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about Palisades. I'm very aware, as you are, as all the folks who live in Fountain Hills who commute into Scottsdale or Phoenix in the morning, that when we have a main break on Palisades, it can have a significant impact on traffic flow, lane closures, and that sort of thing. I'm working with our engineering department. We're taking a hard look at Palisades right now. There's about 8,500 feet of water main that is in serious need of replacement. The material that was used when that line was originally installed does not meet the standards for a pipe that we would install today. And the way that pipe was installed in the ground, basically on what we talk about the bedding. When you dig a trench, you like to lay down a nice soft bed of sand and aggregate so that pipe can rest on a soft bed. Unfortunately, the way that pipe was installed, there are lots of places where the pipe is sitting directly on rocks, large pointy rocks. And 9 out of 10 times when we have a main break on that line, what we find is that the main has been sitting on a pointy rock. So we're going to take a look at replacing that main along Palisades. Based on our experience with Sunridge Drive, I anticipate that we're looking at $3 to $3.5 million to get that work done. That's a lot of money in any one given year. And as Chad was just talking about, I want to make sure you understand that I'm very aware of and I'm careful about how we spend money out here, and that we spread the expenditure of capital over as long a period of time as possible so that we don't have an undue impact on the ratepayers out here. If you spend a bunch of money quickly, that's an immediate trigger for a rate case. So I want you to know that we're taking a hard look at Palisades, and we're very interested in getting rid of that old pipe and getting some pipe in the ground installed the right way. But until we can do that, we've engaged in a couple other activities to try to mitigate the impact of a main break. The most important thing with a main break, because they almost always happen at night for some reason, is you want to find out about the main break as quickly as you can. We don't want the fire department or the police department or a customer to call us and tell us that there's water running down the street. What we like to do is to be able to look at our telemetry and our instrumentation, and we have been installing equipment that calls the operator on call in the middle of the night and says, we think we have a main break. We're seeing a drop in pressure in this location in the system. You better get out here and take a look. So when I mentioned earlier that we installed 6 smart fire hydrants along Palisades this year, those fire hydrants are basically continually monitoring the system. And when they see a significant drop off in pressure over a short period of time, they literally make a phone call to the on-call operator and they say, get out here, we think we have a problem. If we can respond quickly, we can mitigate the amount of water that's lost. We can mitigate the damage to the roads. It's important to understand in Fountain Hills that the system of pipes that get water out to the customers is the same system of pipes that gets water to all the reservoirs. So when we have a main break, it doesn't just impact the transmission of water to the storage tanks, it immediately impacts customers that are in the vicinity of the main break. So what we want to do is we want to find the main breaks as quickly as we can. We want to isolate them by making sure that all our valves work correctly. And then we're going to repair and repave the road as quickly as we can. We have contractors who are on standby 24/7 who are willing to come out and help us with excavating a break, repairing the pipe, and then getting the road repaved as quickly as possible. Because believe me, I know that you get phone calls when we have a main break. I get a lot of those same phone calls, and it's usually at about 1 o'clock in the morning. So until we can get the rest of the mains replaced on Palisades, we're going to be using these other tools in our toolbox to make sure that we can mitigate main breaks as best as possible until we complete that capital project. So with that, I'm happy to take your questions. I did want to answer your question, Mayor Dickey. In terms of the impact of all these different rate scenarios on operations, the answer is absolutely no impact. It won't change a thing that we do on any given day. It won't change the manpower. It won't change the tools and equipment and training of our staff. And it certainly won't affect our attitude. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that. Questions? Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Frank, obviously Palisades, Sunridge Canyon, it's been visible the last few years, and but that's not that old of development either. I'm just wondering condition of some of the existing plant in northeast part of town, Grande El Pueblo, that whole residential area, Blackbird, you mentioned the reservoir there. Just a lot of those pipes are from the 70s. I mean, what are you looking at there?
So I'm sure you can appreciate this. It's amazing sometimes when you look at work that was done in the 60s or 70s or the early 80s versus some of the work that was done in the blow and go 90s and the early 2000s. There's not a direct linear relationship between the age of infrastructure and its reliability. Sometimes it gets a lot to the craftsmanship and the attention to detail of the work that was done. So when I look at the areas where we have main breaks and we keep them all on a map, we keep track of this, my major area of concern is Palisades.
Councilman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions for you. Back in January or February, I knew someone who inadvertently had backed into a fire hydrant and snapped it off. The water was gushing for well over a half an hour. And I had brought it to the Chief Ott's attention that why the fire department did not have the ability to turn that off. I can't imagine a fire hydrant, how much water in a half an hour that lost. So when I had brought it to his attention, he had said that you guys didn't give our fire department the ability to turn that off. So I'm wondering what the policy of EPCOR is. I think that, of course, you wouldn't want everybody having the ability to turn that off, but I would think that the chief of our fire department could be trusted with this because, of course, they responded within minutes to the scene and literally just sat there as, you know, the second fountain in Fountain Hills was going off, waiting for EPCOR to respond. So that's my first question. Did you want to answer that? And then we'll go to the next one? Or?
Certainly.
Okay.
Certainly. So every community in Arizona that we serve is its own animal. And typically, the agreements that we reach with those communities are negotiated between us and the leadership of those communities. If it is indeed the case, and I don't know for a fact whether we have a rule that says that the fire department can't touch the valves that control the fire hydrants, I'm more than happy to have that discussion. If the fire department has the proper equipment to close valves and their employees understand the appropriate way to close a valve related to a fire hydrant so that it doesn't cause water slamming in the system, I personally don't have a problem with that, and I'd be happy to have that discussion.
So if I could ask you to have that conversation with our fire chief and make sure that that doesn't happen again, because like I said, I think that was just a horrendous waste of water. The other question is, it's funny that I was actually going to have the town manager reach out because I didn't know who to call. Within the last month, I've been contacted by 2 constituents who had water bills that were normally in the $60 to $80 range, and then both of them got $300 bills. So my question to you is, when this happens to a resident, when they normally are paying a $60 or $80 a month water bill, and suddenly it's $300 a month, who can they reach out to have that issue looked at? Do you come and test the meter? I told them it could be an irrigation problem. Maybe they broke an irrigation line or something, but who would be the right person for us as council members when we get emails or phone calls to direct these people to?
So anytime a customer has a concern like that, and it happens quite frequently, they should call our 1-800 customer service number and explain the situation and explain. They can ask questions. We can talk them through why their bill may have increased, why their usage may have gone up. I would say 9 out of 10 times it's a problem with the irrigation system. And I won't say daily, but I'll tell you quite often through every month, customer service submits to me requests for relief on a water bill because of some type of a leak on the property. And if the customers demonstrate that they found the leak and that they've made repairs, we're more than happy to work with them to provide relief on that bill.
Okay, great.
I think you had something to ask.
Really quickly, I'm sorry to interject, council member. Wanted to make myself available and make sure that each of you has my contact information as well as the Director of Government Relations. If you're having constituent concerns and questions, that each of you has someone that you can talk to directly at EPCOR as well. So I want to make sure that I'm available, and my door is always open to you guys as well for that.
So if you could give me your card, I'd appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank you.
I'll make sure that my contact info gets sent to everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the majority of meters in Fountain Hills read virtually by just the cars driving? I remember one time when I had first purchased my home here, the guy left a note that said that the cactus was, I had a prickly pear cactus that was hanging over the meter and he was sick of getting stuck. So it was trim your cactus or I'm not reading your meter anymore. So of course I took care of it. But now it seems like I don't even see the guy get out and lift the lid up. And is that done virtually now or?
So I don't have the exact number, but we're very close to having replaced all of the meters in Fountain Hills with smart meters that send a signal that allows a meter reader to drive through the neighborhood in his pickup truck with a computer, and the computer picks up all the meter reads without having to get out of the vehicle. So that's obviously a cost savings for us to not have to have as many meter readers to get the meter reads every month.
Is there ever a time where you'll get a reading what will be an estimated bill instead of what actually was used?
We do not estimate reads. Estimating reads is not acceptable. There may be a rare occurrence where we can't get a read from the new technology and the meter reader can't find the meter. But to my knowledge, we're not estimating reads. It's not a good business practice.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from anyone? Alan or anyone up here? We really appreciate this. This is very helpful. A lot of good information, and making yourselves available like that, and showing us what you're going to do as this rate case goes forward, and all of your outreach. It's really great, and we thank you for coming. Alan?
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just going to say I have no questions, but I also want to thank them because I found it very interesting.
Thank you, Councilman.
And I have some business cards here. I'll leave them on the table if you'd like. My phone number's on there. Please, anytime you have a question from a concerned customer, I'm more than happy to take those calls and address those issues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have another presentation. It's going to be about our, what? Come on. Did I forget something? Oh, okay. Our general plan, and Grady, did you want to introduce that?
Yes, I'd like to call up Bo Larson. Bo, as you're aware, is our relatively new community relations manager. He worked very diligently with John Wesley in developing a communications plan to try to get the word out on the on our general plan. And this is one of many different activities that he's identified to try to get the word out about the general plan. Again, what you're about to see is really not to tell people to vote yes on the general plan. It's pure public information, kind of giving some background information, and then trying to point them in the right direction for additional resources to answer their questions. We're very fortunate to have Bo, since he's been on. This is one of the second projects he did. He came on at the end of August, and the Fountain Hills Insider was one of the first things he worked on, and I have to tell you, that came out beautifully, really timely, really well done. And as you're about to see, he's the narrator of the video that you're about to see, and I think that it's a great job, and you're going to see more of these types of things that come out of the communications office. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bo.
That was a very nice stretch. I appreciate that. Madam Mayor and Council, thank you very much. And as you are aware that November 3rd, our citizens have an opportunity, our voters have an opportunity to ratify the General Plan 2020. And working with John Wesley and his department, we've been working on a communications plan, as Mr. Miller said, to raise awareness for the community so they have a better understanding of what a general plan is and what it means for the community, not just for the next 10 years, but ongoing for the town of Fountain Hills. In that plan includes social media, includes community outreach opportunities. It includes working with our local newspaper and other media outlets to help spread the word. But we also created a video, a short video, that hopefully people find appealing and help them in their understanding, along with the Fountain Hills Insider, help them with their understanding of what the general plan is all about. So hopefully I can push the button and everything works. Before I start, I do want to say that this... Sorry.
I can push the button.
Oh, well, okay. I'm ready. I do want to say, though, that this it was produced completely in town here by a local video production company. Helped me put this together, Andrew Day, who's also a member of the Chamber of Commerce. So I just want to give him some credit. So here you go. Every 10 years, Arizona law requires that cities and towns update their general plan. The plan is a roadmap for development while supporting the quality of life desired by residents. It's a vision of who we are, what we want to maintain, where we want to go. The Fountain Hills General Plan 2020 process began with a series of community engagements. These included open houses, outreach activities, attending events and festivals, all to gain input on the current wants and needs of our residents for the next decade. What residents want is an inviting desert oasis in the Phoenix metropolitan area, a place where natural resources are valued and preserved, where one sees distant mountains by day and countless stars by night. The general plan will help protect our natural environment of desert landscapes, water and air quality, open space, dark skies, and our scenic views. A place where neighbors and visitors gather for special events and festivals,
with a small town feel, conducive to civic involvement and activities, with unique dining and shopping options. A stable economy that invites innovation, creativity, and delivers meaningful employment options, with a thriving environment of commerce centers and amenities, nestled in a community near regional parks, resorts, and recreation, all with an engaged, active, and diverse population. The Fountain Hills General Plan 2020 is a vision for a thriving community, sustained by neighborhoods which offer housing for a variety of ages and lifestyles, and where safety is a top priority, with social environments where spaces are designed for social interaction and events. The general plan provides town leaders direction in meeting the town's needs of our water and sewer, law enforcement, fire protection, and emergency services. It's a document that guides the town in managing public facilities and community services, land use and how it's to be developed, as well as managing the capital improvements program. As Fountain Hills looks towards the next 10 years, it is important to have a strong economic development strategy. The general plan guides the town in managing revenue streams, social and intellectual capital, technology and innovation, as well as art and tourism. It also provides the guidelines on how to finance new development. Fountain Hills is a unique lifestyle. The general plan makes it even better. See the vision for yourself and decide on November 3rd.
So that's it, along with regular outpouring of social media and answering all the questions I can in the community. We want to make sure, again, that our residents are aware of this program, and hopefully what we're doing makes a difference.
Thank you so much. I love it. Questions? Councilman.
That was really well done. I'm impressed. Is there the ability to put that on public access?
We started broadcasting it last week.
Oh, awesome.
So in fact, I think we have it set so it comes on just before the council meeting. So we have a captive audience. And then tonight was the actual premiere. So we're going to have this on both social media and also on our website starting tonight.
Oh, that's great. Very well done.
Well, thank you.
Mike, anything? Well, I really appreciate that. Kind of goes with what I started the meeting with, which is we're a very wonderful community. This is probably going to be at the bottom of the ballot, so please don't give up on us. Look through it all. There's an awful lot of up and down things going on, but this is certainly an up one, and really want everybody's full involvement. I want to thank John and this entire, our consultants, of course, and the staff, because we had so many meetings and so much input. And one of the things, as being someone that's been here for 37, 38 years, is that it doesn't change that much what is important to the people in this town. And we're definitely united, and I'm looking forward to this. I think I'm allowed to say passing, and that I hope that the community supports all the work that we've done together on this. And we're so glad that you're here with us too, because this is a step in a great direction for the town of Fountain Hills. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Council.
Could you do me a favor, and could you email that to all the council members so that we can then send it out to people that contact us and everything?
Absolutely.
I think it'd be good to have that on our email.
Good idea.
That this evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we're going to switch gears and go to our Valley Metro Transit analysis, which is another long-term project that we've been working on. And we want to welcome RPTA here, Valley Metro, and we'll see what they say about all the work that they've been doing on our behalf to show us some of the possibilities and options for Fountain Hills going forward. Grady?
Thank you, Mayor. As council's aware, a few years ago, the town of Fountain Hills joined and became a member of Valley Metro, which is the regional transit provider for Maricopa County. Membership in Valley Metro entitles not only the town to sit at the board of directors meetings, of which Councilmember Charneau, Vice Mayor, is actually representing the town at, but also allows Fountain Hills to participate in regional transit policy and service decisions, which is a big deal. It's actually made us become more of a player than we were before. As part of the membership, periodically, cities that are members are entitled to having a comprehensive transit study at no cost. And so this is the result of a study that I believe started early last year, but COVID and the pandemic kind of caught us a little off guard. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Town Manager Dave Trimble, who is going to have some introductions, and turn it over to our folks from Valley Metro.
Thanks, Grady, Mayor and Council. I'm really happy to have experts from Valley Metro here tonight. As you know, I help coordinate the paperwork and do the yearly applications and reporting to Valley Metro for our current service that we have here in town. So with that, we'll get it turned out. We'll introduce tonight Joe Gregory's here. He's the Manager of Service Planning and GIS at Valley Metro. Really want to thank Joe for being here in person. Valley Metro office staff hasn't been in the office since COVID hit. So it was, really appreciate you being here in person, Joe. And really, Hannah Quincy is on the line, and she's going to present the findings to us tonight of their analysis. She is the senior transit planner, and she kind of led the effort. I know Joe and others, a lot of others, and resources at Valley Metro worked hard on this analysis. So I want to thank her for being here. I don't know if Carol's on the line as well. Carol Ketcherside, I know, was instrumental in this as well. She's the Deputy Director of Planning and Development at Valley Metro. So with that, we'll turn it over to Hannah on the line, and then we'll have Joe here for questions, and also Hannah will be available for questions afterwards.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, David, and good evening, Mayor Dickey and members of the council. Tonight I'm going to give you a presentation, an overview of the Fountain Hills Transit Feasibility Study that we published and presented to the town in May of this year, 2020. So with that, I will get going. So just to start out, I want to give you just kind of a little bit of an overview about Valley Metro. We are the regional transit provider here in the Valley. We operate transit every day of the year. We operate 62 local routes, 20 express and rapid routes for commuters. We have 20 circulator routes that serve local jurisdictions across the region. In addition to that, we have 28 miles of light rail, over 400 van pools, and we operate regional paratransit and ride choice service, which is an on-demand cab voucher service for seniors and people with disabilities who are ADA certified. And just in terms of the scope of our operation, we operate about 40 million revenue miles a year and serve about 70 million passenger boardings. We have quite a few different funding sources for our operations in the mix. Included in that are fares paid by the riders of our transit system. We receive federal grants for operations as well as regional funds, and that includes the public transportation funds, or otherwise known as PTF funds, and that is through the Prop 400 sales tax. We also receive regional area road funds, funds from MAG, and in addition to that, we have transit service agreements with local jurisdictions. As you can see on this slide, there's a table that kind of shows some of those jurisdictions who contribute local funds towards the transit services operating in their cities or their towns. So with that, I'll start with the presentation on the transit study. So as David mentioned, we did complete this study internally. I led the study. This was at no cost to the town. In fact, this is a service that we provide to our member cities. We do on a fairly regular basis, we're completing transit feasibility studies for our member cities. And so there was a transit feasibility study that was completed for the town of Fountain Hills in 2015. And then again, this one that I'm presenting on today in 2020. And so it really kind of provided an update and a comparison to some of the previous work that was done. So in terms of the scope of this study, we did a very in-depth analysis of existing conditions that included a demographic analysis and an employment analysis to give us a really great understanding of the need for transit services and the demand for transit services in the town of Fountain Hills. And with that sort of information, we were able to develop transit service concepts for you to consider for the future of transit services in the town. And we put together a sort of implementation plan and funding strategies for you to consider in terms of how to move forward if you would like to implement any of these services and how they could be funded. And delivered all of this in a final implementation plan in May of 2020. So as I mentioned, the demographic analysis was really in-depth, but I do want to touch on some of the highlights that are some of the key points that help us understand the demand for transit. We found that in terms of population, that the 2035 MAG planning horizon projects that Fountain Hills residential population will grow to over 35,000. And that's an increase of about 47% above the current population level. Additionally, today, 14% of Fountain Hills population is disabled, and 61% of this group is aged 65 and older. That's important for us to know for in terms of the need for ADA impaired transit services. Additionally, in terms of vehicle ownership, only 2% of Fountain Hills residents do not have a personal vehicle. However, nearly half of housing units do have access to at least 2 vehicles. And then in terms of income below poverty, the low-income population accounted for about 6% of families and about 9% of all individual residents in Fountain Hills. So that's just a kind of snapshot, a few of the demographics. I also want to touch on some of the employment analysis that we did. So we looked at 2 distinct groups here. We looked at those who were employed within Fountain Hills and those who are residents employed, and that could mean employed within Fountain Hills or outside. But the home area are those who live in Fountain Hills. More than half of the residents work in Phoenix and Scottsdale. About 26% travel under 10 miles to work, and about 61% travel between 10 and 24 miles to work. So for those who work in Fountain Hills, we see that the typical commute pattern is from southern and western cities like Chandler, Mesa, and Gilbert. 30% of the workers are Fountain Hills residents. 35% live under 10 miles away from work. About 40% live 10 to 20 miles away from work, and 17% live 25 to 50 miles away. So this kind of gives you an idea of the need for commuter type services and express services. So next I will touch on the existing transit options. Currently, you see on the left here, this is our transit network, and there's sort of a call out that shows the Route 514 Express. The 514 is the express service that operates. It's the only fixed route service that operates in Fountain Hills and carries riders from Fountain Hills to Scottsdale and into downtown Phoenix. The daily average boardings on this route before COVID was around 61 rides a day. 4 of those boardings were from Fountain Hills residents. Currently on the Route 514, There's been a service reduction due to COVID temporarily. Before COVID, there were two trips in the morning, 2 trips in the evening, sort of inbound and outbound. So just 2 trips total. And now that's been cut down to 1 trip. And the impact to ridership because of COVID is we're seeing either 0 to 1 average daily boardings in the town of Fountain Hills. Next, we have Ride Choice. Ride Choice is that cab voucher service for seniors and people with disabilities who are ADA certified. And this it's a pretty new service for the town of Fountain Hills. It was implemented in July of 2015. However, we've seen steady growth since implementation, about 126% growth since FY15. And so we see that the major travel pattern within and outside of Fountain Hills is really the Mayo Clinic, is that connection to the Mayo Clinic area, and the Mustang Transit Center, which would provide a connection to the region's public transit network. And not shown here, but I did want to mention the van pool program. We currently have 2 van pools that originate in Fountain Hills and commute to the Mayo Clinic. We don't have any van pools that commute from outside of Fountain Hills into Fountain Hills. Next, I will talk about the transit service concepts that were developed, and these would be for consideration for future implementation. First, we looked at community connectors. These would be locally funded and serve local areas around Fountain Hills, and really kind of building on the community connector routes that were identified in the 2015 study. And so alternative 1 here would look at a locally funded circulator service that would provide 4 daily peak period round trips from downtown Fountain Hills to the Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, since we do see that as being sort of a major destination for Fountain Hills residents and for employment. The cost for this scenario would be $123,000 a year, and the ridership is estimated to be 59 average daily boardings. A second alternative looks very similar. It's just a slightly shorter route. Provides the same 4 daily peak period round trips from Saguaro Boulevard and Shea Boulevard to the Mayo Clinic. This cost is $77,000 a year in operating cost and would serve an estimated 39 riders. Alternative 3, again, very similar, but takes a little bit different routing. It's more mirroring the routing of the Route 514. And so this cost would be $109,000 a year, and the ridership estimate is 58 boardings. Next, we looked at express route modifications and primarily focused on the Route 514, since this is what currently serves Fountain Hills. The first alternative that we looked at is taking service off of McDowell. Currently, there are a lot of stops that occur, and it takes a lot of time to serve all these stops on McDowell. And so we wanted to look at what would happen if we were to just use the 202 and the 101 alternatively to speed up the trip. Currently, there's redundant local service on McDowell, and we found that this option would actually save 20 minutes over the length of the trip. So something definitely worth considering. Alternative 2, this modification would end the route at the Mustang Transit Center and take service off of McDowell. Now, this option, what we're really trying to look at here is if service was removed from Fountain Hills and ended at the Mustang Transit Center, then Fountain Hills could potentially use those PTF funds, those regional transportation funds, for a different type of service. So we wanted to look at, well, what does that do to the route if we weren't no longer to serve Fountain Hills? And so this is what it could look like. And so this is something that, the city of Scottsdale has been really promoting that they would like to see happen. And in fact, currently in our proposed service changes, we're gathering public input on a service change to the Route 514 that would end at the Mustang Transit Center as sort of an exploratory process just to gather input at this time. So this is essentially what it could look like. We also wanted to investigate what another routing on the 514 could look like if we were to reroute it down Shea Boulevard, connect it to the SR51 at Dreamy Draw Park and Ride. We ultimately found that this is not recommended and doesn't really benefit anyone because it actually takes a long time to travel down Shea Boulevard, and it adds a lot of runtime to the route, not to mention a transfer to the 51. And so this would actually cause trips from Fountain Hills to take a lot longer than they do today, which are already, considerable amount of runtime. So we don't recommend this. We just wanted to look at what the scenario would look like. So. And finally, the alternative 4 for the 514 really doesn't change the route. It really just looks at bringing up the service, the current service levels, to the minimum service standard. We have service standards through our transit standards and performance measures for express services that are at a minimum 4 inbound and 4 outbound trips. And so this would bring the route, this estimate would bring the route up to that minimum standard. And if you also notice, it adds 1 midday round trip because there has been some interest in looking at, how to serve outside of just those peak hours. And so this is the estimate for bringing that up to standard and adding that midday round trip. So in addition to looking at the 514, we also explored a new type of express route. As you recall from the employment analysis, we did see that travel pattern of folks that live in other parts of the valley. And so this would be a first of its kind, really, a cross-town express route, a first of its kind for Valley Metro. And so what we looked at here is basically operating an express peak hour service, 3 inbound, 3 outbound trips from Fountain Hills to the Gilbert Road and McDowell Road Park and Ride on the 202 and Gilbert Road in Mesa, traveling via the Beeline Highway. So this would actually connect you to that Park and Ride and to the express service 535. So Fountain Hills residents could transfer on that express route and get to downtown Phoenix actually faster than they can today traveling on the 514. It currently takes approximately 1 hour and 25 minutes for Fountain Hills residents to travel to Phoenix via the 514. And this would save, let's see, it would take them approximately 1 hour with this scenario, including the transfer time. So we think this has a lot of merit. And then we looked at alternative 2 really is sort of a phase 2 where it extends that service that I just talked about, the Fountain Hills to Mesa Crosstown Express. It extends it from that Park and Ride at McDowell and Gilbert Road, and then extends it down to the Gilbert Road Main Street Transit Center and Park and Ride in Mesa, which connects then to the light rail and to the Route 40, the Route 45, and the Route 136 in Mesa. So really kind of gets you further into that transit system, provides a lot more connections, and the ridership estimate for this is expected to be about 39 boardings a day. We also looked at a new downtown circulator, and really this can be scalable. So what we looked at is it doesn't have any specific routing, but if you were to take a 1.5 mile bidirectional loop with half an hour headways for 12 hours a day, it would come out to be about $142,000. But like I mentioned, this could be scaled up or down, so you'd have more or less service just depending on the funding availability and the needs to serve the downtown area. In addition to the downtown circulator, we also looked at another alternative service delivery model called microtransit. Now, microtransit is an emerging transit mode that offers flexible and dynamic demand-driven transportation solution to areas with limited transit access or where traditional fixed route service isn't feasible. Typically serves a zone-based area with a fleet of smaller vehicles, and the routing is dynamic, kind of based on real-time demand. So you would have a smartphone, you could call it up, and it would come to you and maybe even chain some trips together. It's a really new and emerging type of service that we're exploring in the region, and there are at least, we have one city, Glendale, is currently operating microtransit, and a couple other cities very, very interested as well. So we'll have, more sort of lessons learned on microtransit very soon. But we put together sort of a really kind of illustrative cost estimate for what a microtransit service could look like in Fountain Hills. And so this is a scenario that could serve the entirety of Fountain Hills with 2 vehicles for 12 hours a day. Comes out to be about $535,000 a year in operating cost. In addition to that, you can always consider other service ideas like third-party partnerships, such as Uber and Lyft. These TNCs are also an emerging service model for transit agencies to help incentivize first and last mile connections to transit and to help shuttle special event attendees around congested areas. These partnerships can be offered to riders through a promo code offering discounted or free rides. In addition to that, we've mentioned there are a couple of van pools that are going from Fountain Hills to the Mayo Clinic, and we are certainly here to help expand those services if you'd like to see more van pools, and if you would think they would be of benefit to the businesses in the town. We have our TDM team on hand and happy to help talk about that expansion. So next, now that I've kind of gone over those different transit options, we'll talk about funding strategies and how the town might go about implementing any of these. So first, I just wanted to touch on the existing transit funding sources and uses. So currently, the town of Fountain Hills receives funding for transportation services through the PTF, or the Public Transportation Funds. These are regional transit funds, and through the Arizona Lottery Funds, otherwise known as ALF, and formerly known as LTAF. Currently, all of the town's PTF funds are used to fund the Route 514 and Ride Choice services. The town currently has a bank of ALF or ALF funds of about $226,000. Now these are banked and need to be spent, or a plan needs to be in place to spend them down before the town can receive future allocations of the ALF funds. But certainly, if the town wants to move forward with any of the funding strategies in this presentation and in this plan that would serve as the sort of plan to spend down these AL funds, and you could essentially continue to receive your future allocations with the scenarios that we're talking about. What I also wanted to point out on this slide with the Fountain Hills Ride Choice cost table there is just to kind of show the growth in cost. And I have FY19 and FY20. It's also very similar to FY19, just over $8,000. And so what this is showing you over, the past 3 years, the expenditures have been around $8,000, but your allocation of PTF funds are actually more close to about $15,000. So there's room to actually kind of grow the demand for Ride Choice services with the current allocation that you have. So the town could always consider applying for Section 5310 federal funds. These are funds that are for enhanced services for seniors and people with disabilities. They are considered capital funds, and such. They are typically used for buying buses and vans. But if you wanted to apply for these funds for any type of service, it would need to be for seniors and people with disabilities, and you'd need a 20% local match. You could always use your ALF funds as your local match if this is something that you wanted to pursue. Okay, so we took all of this information and we thought, what would be the most sort of recommended service change to look at and consider. If you want to make a change to the 514, if you are interested in looking at that sort of savings and runtime, and want to explore this Fountain Hills to Mesa Crosstown Express, we looked at how that could be funded. That would require canceling the service on the 514 to Fountain Hills, but then taking that money and putting it towards this Crosstown Express. Also taking your bank of your unspent ALF funds and then applying for future allocations of ALF, which you get about $65,000 a year. So you could basically cobble these funds together, and so these funds total would be able to cover the operating costs of about $147,000 a year to cover this service, and that would be through the end of the tax of Prop 400. And now I think the funding scenario would change after Prop 400 extension. That would be a conversation that you would want to have about how that would be funded going forward. But this funding snapshot essentially gets you through the end of that tax. And then the alternative to phase 2 of the Crosstown Express to Mesa, that's more expensive because it does operate a longer route, $316,000 a year. And this would be something worth considering in the Prop 400 extension of public transportation funds. Another thing worth considering is the Ride Choice expansion. I mentioned a little bit that you have some room with your current PTF funds to increase the demand for Ride Choice services. And now, to use PTF funds, the Ride Choice has to be serving ADA eligible population. But we do have examples in the region where cities have chosen to expand the service beyond just ADA eligible population to low income residents. And that's something certainly you're welcome to explore as well. You could use your ALF funds to expand the service to the low income residents. And we would just require that Fountain Hills handle the qualification process and manage the low-income residents. that use Ride Choice, but we would certainly be, responsible for handling all of that for the ADA eligible residents. A couple other considerations for Prop 400 extension. The Route 80, Northern and Shea Boulevard extension to Fountain Hills. This was something that was actually originally in Prop 400. I believe it got taken out at some point because of the revenue shortfalls related to the Great Recession. And so it's something worth considering trying to bring back. And this cost estimate is back of the envelope, and it just looks at extending that route into Fountain Hills. Additionally, the 514 express modification that we looked at, the alternative 4, that brings that service up to the minimum standard and adds a midday trip. That's something that could be considered for Prop 400 extension as well. Additionally, we talked about those community connectors, microtransit services, and downtown circulator. These are all local services, and so the town could consider ways of funding those locally through a town-wide sales tax, business levy, or other sort of tax. So those are the highlights from the Fountain Hills Transit Feasibility Study. A lot of, I think, really good ideas for service enhancements that would be, better utilizing the town's available funds and improving service for riders. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for that. What a thorough report. Do you want to ask questions now? Do you have any questions here from the council? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I don't really have any questions, so I don't know if we want to start a discussion or see if anyone else has questions before we.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I had a bunch of questions, and Hannah answered them all and put them in this into this presentation. So the things that I had asked her. Oh, yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I'm happy to start discussing. Grady?
Yeah, I was just thinking, the mayor and I talked a little bit when we meet traditionally 1:30 of the day of council meetings and kind of go over the agenda. It's called agenda review. And she and I were talking about strategies on how to look at the council looking at the presentation tonight and then trying to decide at some point how to move forward with some of the recommendations and ideas that are contained in the report and the presentation. And I think that really, I can't think of a better way of doing this except for maybe at our council retreat, that we need to, for instance, make a decision on how to spend down the money that's in the reserves right now. Because as a result, this is the first year in many years that we did not receive our allocation of the ALF money. And so we want to continue receiving that in the future. But we definitely need to have a plan. And in February, the retreat would be held. And we also typically around February is about the time that Valley Metro requires us to put together a plan for the next year as to what we're trying to do. And then that allows us to have some influence on the budget for the following year, for July 1st. So again, I'm just kicking that around as an idea. Perhaps the council has some other thoughts, but I think we can come forth to that council meeting retreat in February based on some direction that comes out of this meeting tonight. So if there's like maybe one or two really good ideas that you're think are really good that we should explore further and have further discussion, I would suggest that you kind of figure out what those are tonight, and then let's go ahead and have a serious policy discussion at the retreat, and then we can kind of plan for the future. So that's for my 2 cents.
Okay, Mike? Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I mean, I'm okay with that strategy. It's just I know the retreat gets to be a long day and the topics stack up, and after lunch, everyone just wants to end it. So I don't want to give this, short shrift either in terms of the attention it needs and some of the policy decisions we need to make going forward. So if we do a separate work study prior to the retreat or just handle it at the retreat, I mean, definitely needs to be hammered out one way or the other, and whether there's budgetary considerations that might factor in. I think it's a given that 514 is probably not going to survive. So I think that's probably one assumption we can probably move ahead with. It just hasn't worked out here, and it's been out here for many years. And obviously with the 225 in the bank that we have, I think the crosstown extension to Gilbert, the park and ride there is probably a good, pilot program for 2 years or so. But right around that time, the money's going to be running out because it is going to cost a little bit more than the funding we get after we spend the money in the bank. And so, I just think some more local consideration needs to be given, especially with some of these statistics. Despite our strategic plan and our wanting younger people and families moving here, I mean, the fact of the matter is, the study says since 2014, it's been a 44% increase in our population over the age of 65. The demand for transportation options, serve seniors and people with disabilities has greatly increased during that time. 2014, 33 workers took transit. 2017, 3 workers. So that's like a 91% drop. So I think looking at, I'm glad to see the numbers on ride choice and how those have come up. I'm glad to see that's being utilized, and I want to see that continue to increase. And if we can look at options with Give a Lift, if that needs some kind of more administrative help or capital help or expansion, I just think as we continue to age and medical needs, I think, all these doctors' visits and all these kinds of visits, we should as a community look at that in terms of serving our population. Regionally, I love, the Valley Metro meetings, board meetings are interesting and informative, and I'm glad we've been part of that. But I think regionally, Fountain Hills commuters, I mean, they're just driving in themselves, and even now with COVID, there's probably going to be more staying home on computers and stuff. So I just don't know if. Although I would like to see an increase in van pool expansion. I think we have a lot of major employers, Mesa, East Valley, Scottsdale, that side of the mountain, that we should easily have 5 to 10 van pools that go to specific corporations. And, we used to have one that go to McDonnell Douglas years ago. And I just think that there's a lot of potential there, and with Bo's help, I think we can increase some of the marketing efforts on some of these programs. So I know that wasn't quick, but I think Crosstown Express is a good interim thing, but I think we need to look beyond that in terms of, and maybe even the downtown thing. If there's some survey we can do with our members at the activity center, like, would they use that service? Would it help our local businesses downtown? We don't want to implement something if it's not going to be used, but I think that's worth looking into. And again, it all comes down to funding, but I think the community connector, like going into Scottsdale, that probably would be good, but I just think money-wise, that's probably not something we can pursue. But again, just serving more of the local population within our community, I think, is something we need to seriously look at. Thanks.
Well, I do want to just add something too, and that good thoughts, Vice Mayor. Dave, do you want to come up to the podium? There was some mention by Hannah, and by the way, Hannah, great job with your presentation. You really were able to synthesize everything very well. The one thing I wanted to ask Dave, remember we found out that through Valley Metro that there was a workshop held, and I think it was the federal program that Hannah just referenced as far as for vehicles and also operating costs. You want to kind of explain, they only do that like every other year or every 2 years or something like that. Do you remember? You went, I think it was in 2019.
Yeah, Meg put that on, Maricopa Association of Governments. It was long day. I remember going downtown and spending about 6 hours going over the program. It seemed like there were tons of strings attached to that, to the point where I don't know if we could administer it. And it was really focused more on nonprofits. Like if maybe the town partnered with a nonprofit. I think I was the only one there representing a municipality. So it seemed like it was more focused on those types of people, and I can't remember the names.
You said there were a number of nonprofits and church organizations there.
Right, right. And it was really focused on purchasing of vehicles, you know. That was the major focus, it seemed like. So I'm not so sure. I mean, it sounds good, but I just would have some reservations about trying to go that route, unless we really wanted to just purchase a vehicle or something like that.
I'm intrigued with the ride choice services and looking at expanding that here and even getting the low-income people involved in that. We would have to manage that part of it, though. Is that something that we know? Is there enough demand for that? Is there a way to find that?
Well, we could find out. I guess there's some survey on some socioeconomic information we could probably obtain, maybe from DES, about who lives here in town and who might be interested in it. Dave, I don't think a lot of people understand how ride choice works, and it's evolved and changed a few times since we've joined it or have partnered with it. You want to just explain the whole concept of how it works?
Yeah, that's true. And the biggest advantage I think that has changed over the past year or two is they came out with what they were calling a pilot program that really decreased the cost to the riders. So whereas under the previous ride choice program, a ride, say, to the hospital at 90th and Shea would cost, I think, what we say, $30 round trip. That now is down to $4 each way. So it's a flat rate. And what happened was under the old program, the price really kind of skyrocketed after the first 4 miles or something. It was really meant to be kind of a shorter trip. So when you got to 10 miles each way, 20 miles round trip, it really added a lot of cost to the residents. Now this pilot program, I think, has been in place for 6 or 8 months, maybe a little bit more. We could definitely publicize that more.
It's actually helping us because now we have so many people who have to go to like the VA hospital, or they have to go to maybe the Mayo Hospital over across town. And so if you're going longer distances, the new program actually benefits outlying communities like Fountain Hills much better. Also, just to let you know, it's not Valley Metro vehicles, it's actually taxis. So they're getting the taxis to participate in this.
Right. And then I think it's Uber and Lyft as well.
Now it's the rideshare services. But we do get complaints from time to time that certain providers don't want to really come to town because they're going quite a bit of distance out of their way to come to town. I think that's been pretty much fixed with the contracts that they have in place now with the current providers. But that was a complaint we had in the past. But I think we can go find out the number of people we have in town, survey people, and see if we can build that up, because we have like another $7,000 or $8,000 a year that we can spend with the allocation we get each year. So it's a good thought on that.
And Hannah, you may be better equipped. I think you had it in your presentation. What does the administration, so the town would have to qualify the residents, I think she said on there.
As
so
low and
I'm not
moderate
sure how
income.
that would look, how much administration there would be in that, but certainly, we can look into that.
I think we've done other programs where we've used SRP or some other guidelines to see how they determine that. Would you agree, Hannah?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would look at one of the peers in the region. I think it's the city of Surprise who has expanded the service to the low-income residents. So we could talk to them and just get the specifics on how they administer that specifically, and and give you that kind of information to give you an idea of what that takes administratively for the town.
Thank you. Any other questions? So I've been, having the same thoughts like you, looking at this whole thing. This is sort of, we're talking about transportation and almost a three-pronged. We're talking about Prop 400 extension, where the town of Fountain Hills has proposed 13 or 14 projects. Just to know that several of them, if they're in the circular or the micro transit, from what MAG is starting to say, that some of those may not be weighed as much as we go forward with our with all the projects that all the cities want out of that tax, because it's just not going to be enough to have sent. So some of those may not be as well accepted as a commuter type of situation. So we're doing that. Obviously, I look ahead when we talk about having 35,000 people possibly in our town, and not that far in the distance. So my thoughts are like to stay kind of in line for transit funding in the future, and looking at the big picture, that I like that alternative one, the one that goes to Mesa. And as Hannah did all that math for me, I had asked her, what does this do to ride choice? And it's like, okay, it's separate, right? And so we still have some room to grow with that. And maybe we can put more publicity out for that too. But we've heard from constituents so happy about that change that you just talked about, the $4. I mean, it's changed people's lives. But if we look at, again, the drop in the 514, we would get the 65,000 plus the 65,000 we didn't get. Then we have the 226. We basically get about 100,000 a year if we drop the 514. So, right. And with the, so that will get us back into where we may know what we're going to get out of Prop 400. So it's just something to keep in mind, as we look at being part of the region. We have more restaurants, more resorts. We have more things coming here that are possible drawing employers, but also, employees. But also we do have the idea that there could be more people living here who would be regular commuters. It's sort of a chicken and egg thing, they're not using the 514 because it's not, it takes forever. You have to leave so early, then you have to leave work early to get home. So I'm really happy to have this in-depth discussion and all of this information in one place in front of us. So I'm happy to move forward however you want to, if you think we should meet or do something before the retreat.
Well, it's interesting, Mayor. I thought there would be more. I didn't think there was going to be as much consensus because there were a lot of great options thrown to the council tonight. But it seems to me, I didn't hear any, any debate over the Gilbert Road connection. So I think there's consensus there, and also there's consensus, it appears, to try to grow the ride choice and try to expand it to low and moderate income folks. And then I think that's in the interim. And then the other thing, I think we definitely have a dire need in this community, and it's only going to get worse over time as people are aging. We're definitely a have-not community for paratransit. We definitely are one of the only communities of our size or larger that does not have dial ride service and a on-demand type of service that can pick people up, and get taken where they need to go. So I'd like to really work on maybe both the vice mayor, the mayor, and myself trying to help influence this, both Valley Metro, to maybe try to get that to be a regionalized service rather than just right now. It's kind of a confederation of cities that they provide either their own or they buy into Valley Metro providing that. So I think that that's something that I'd like to really see, because it's not just us. There's other communities that are small or smaller than us that don't have dial ride either. So I think we could actually kind of work together and try to help influence this just as a need. And as you know, it's not even our community, it's the whole valley is aging, and this is going to become more and more important to places like Fountain Hills.
Thank you. So time-wise, where are we at where we're not going to risk the 226 or the 265s?
So that my understanding is that the form that we have to do is usually February of each year, right, Dave? that,
Do you have anything that you would like to add, Joe, or anything? Or,
I'm just happy to hear everyone with their input, and I'm glad that you all enjoyed the presentation. And yeah, we're certainly really eager to come out here and help you guys however we can serve your residents. The thing with your when you're talking about your retreat in, like, say, February for our regular service change process for our usual, April and October process, that would put us right in line for October, because we'd have, probably some decisions made, February, March, and then we'd go through the board process in April, and then usually we go through the public outreach in May. So that would help us out for the the fixed route services.
Could you go over for the council and public the two times a year that the changes are allowed, and kind of walk through that process? I don't think that's...
Oh, sure,
you can't
sure.
just change, you have to kind of go through their process, and it's twice a year.
Yeah, we have two service changes per year. That's based on our contracts with our contractors who actually run the service, and with the unions who are the actual drivers. So it's the fourth Monday of the month in April and October. And so those are the two times we can make basically fixed route changes. And so in order to do that, we're always kind of working basically 6 months ahead of time. So right now, we're talking about the April 2021 changes, and here we are in October 2020, and we'll be going out to the public on those changes next month. And we're going to go through the board process, RTAG, then the Transit Management Committee, and then the board. That goes through basically the April timeframe. And then so once that's done, and once the previous April's or the service changes have taken place, then we go back immediately. Basically, we leave a month. Leave basically a week where we're not doing any outreach, and then we come back immediately and say, okay, well for the next time, how do you feel about these changes? So we're always kind of on a wheel, but yeah. So we have basically two times per month, or 2 times per year where we can basically institute major service changes.
We're kind of, I can just summarize. I think we're too late to make a change in April, because the outreach and things like that have already, the ship has sailed, so to speak. So I think the next time, if I understand it right,
would be October.
Would be October of 2021. And we could continue to deliberate up until
we go to the board in about April, and then we go out to the public in May, and then usually we have to go to the board twice for each service change. The first time is just to notify that we're going to be talking to the public, because we don't want people calling council members or mayors or anything and saying, what's going on with my service, and they don't know about it because we didn't tell them. So we tell them once. And then we go through the service change process. We go through the public outreach, and then we go again through the board, and that's when they actually accept the changes. They vote on the changes, and that's basically voting on the contracts and on the IGAs.
So the retreat might work just fine.
Okay, well, that's great. I appreciate that. Any other questions? Great, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank Hannah, Joe, and the rest of the crew at Valley Metro for this update and this study. Appreciate it very much, very informative, and it'll help kind of provide a springboard for future discussions. And I think we had 2 meetings, kind of draft sessions while this was being formulated, which I was a part of. So it was just a good process to be part of. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Mike, too, because we have a lot of committees around the region, and some of them we can't attend or be as intimately involved. And Mike's really been there right from the beginning, and keeping us, our voices there. So, and then letting us know what's going on. So, I'm very familiar with Valley Metro. My Jim was there forever, and I love the work that they do, and the region has changed so much in all these years, and a lot of progress being made. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you so much for your time. Good night.
Night. So now we get to the regular part of our meeting, which is going to be actually a little shorter. The call to the public. Do we have any speaker cards? No? Okay. Our consent agenda, which is, as always, if you have anything you want to take off, you can do that. Otherwise, can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, items A, B, and C.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It passes. Our regular agenda, we don't have any items tonight. Do you have anything you'd like to add or for the mic? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn then?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
Good night.
You're running.